It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This is the Cosmick Voice. Cosmick Voice. Music, talk, and nothing but business with your hosts, Chris Natalini and Mick Michaels. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cosmick Voice. This is Season 6, Episode 22. I am here with my co-host, Chris Natalini.
What up, everybody?
And I am Mick Michaels.
Mick?
Chris?
What's up, man?
How you doing, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Day of recording. We were close to 70 degrees today.
Oh, it was beautiful.
It was gorgeous. Out of the rain, all that miserable weather. It was good, man. Today is a good day.
It's a very good day. Well, when this episode airs, it will officially be spring.
That is correct.
Boy, did it feel like spring today. Somebody buy that groundhog a hamburger, please. Give him a milkshake.
I don't think he told us how much rain we were going to get.
No, that's a whole nother business there. But yeah, absolutely. No, I enjoy it, man. Each day it's getting closer and closer. I know we talked about it in the last episode, but I love that time. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I mean, I'm just happy if there's sunlight out. You know, I've said it before, like I like hoodies, so like sunny and brisk is good with me, but I like sun, man. I just want to see sun.
Yeah, I hear you.
Another sunny day.
It doesn't have to be completely clear skies. I don't mind some clouds, but you know, that sun. I want to be able to see blue, and I want the heat of that sun on me. Because I like going out, taking walks, and like we talked about before, I like the days longer. It just makes you feel like you're a little bit more alive, like there's stuff you could do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And as of time of recording this, our days are getting longer, and by the time this airs, our days will definitely be longer.
It's Alaska, right? Like there's months on end. Is it Alaska that's months on end and it's like darkness?
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it.
Yes.
I couldn't do it.
No, dude, no. As a matter of fact, it's funny because I don't know if you watch it. Did you watch True Detective on HBO this past season? Okay.
I did not.
Well, it was Jodie Foster, and it was based in Alaska, and it was like 30 Days of Night. It just looked cold. Like, I don't think they filmed it all in Alaska. I think they filmed a good portion of it. Dude, it looked cold, it looked miserable, and it was just completely dark the entire time. I'm like, no.
No, I couldn't handle it.
Not happening. Nope.
No.
Nope.
Nah.
Everything's frozen. It's snowing. No. Nope.
I have to have some daylight. I guess this is one of my things that I would like to do when I do get older and to the point that I'm not going to do anything else anymore. I'm going to a warm state. That's it, hands down.
Oh.
I want to get rid of heavy Han Solo jackets.
Yep.
Maybe a pullover or sweat jacket or something like that, but I've had it. I'm done with it. And you see sun more often, so I don't know. Yes. We'll see what happens. But yeah, right now I'll take it as it comes.
We have also been talking as we grow older, it's definitely looking like we could eventually at some time down the road end up in a warmer state. You know, that is a conversation we've had once we get into our golden years.
I don't know if I'm calling them golden years because the way I'm walking anymore, it don't seem too golden. But warmer state may help. So who knows? I guess golden years in a golden state is better than golden showers. That's the way I look at it. And I've been getting golden showers most of my life. That's the way it feels like. Especially if you're a working musician.
We definitely get golden showered on a lot of occasions.
Yeah. What a cycle, huh? Boy, you guys are real positive. I guess I'm done listening to you. Yeah, all right, bud.
Well, listen, man, here's the thing, right? Like, it's tough in this. This industry is just tough. It just beats you down.
It does beat you down. But, you know, we talked about it in another episode where when you have that relationship or that connectivity with another musician who's experienced things similar, you can joke about it. It's funny among the group. You know, bad eating, terrible sleeping, horrible gigs, bad sound, all that kind of stuff. It's funny after it's happened, right? And then you're sharing it with other people. You try to make that fun, but it's a tough environment. you're dealing with a lot of personalities and a lot of different rules, and unfortunately, a lot of disappointment at times. I mean, what are you going to do?
No door guys, no sound guys.
No mics, no cables, no stands.
No mics, no cables.
No sound checks.
Well, you can't have
no crowd.
Well, yeah, you can't really have a sound check without a sound guy. So,
Well, yeah, I guess so. You just play and then go, what do you think? I don't know. All right, let's go.
Because there's nothing better than looking in the crowd and go, hear me okay? Am I good? Turn up, turn down. Good. Everything's good. Sounds good. Awesome.
People are looking at you like, what are you talking about? I don't know one thing.
No, wait, I got to step off the stage in the middle of a song to turn somebody up.
Yeah. It's the worst. It really is. It's tough. And then add on coastal flooding, and then you pretty much have a regular Corners of Sanctuary gig night anywhere in the world. Even in a landlocked state, you'll have coastal flooding warning.
It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing.
It's Russ the Boss.
This is Stephen Pearson from Rat, the Rat Bastard. You're listening to the Cosmick Voice.
And this is pretty amazing. Season 6, episode 22. We are winding down this season. Another fantastic season. Hopefully somebody learned something. I did. And that's to quit while I'm ahead. But this is
I learned a couple things.
Yeah, I learned a couple things. I had to listen back again because I said that? He said that? Who are these guys?
Who are these guys?
Bunch of liars. Anyway, this is a special episode for us. This is our Q&A episode of Season 6.
Yeah,
and we put something out early in the season about listeners send in some questions, and we'll do a whole show around it. So we were able to, over the course of the last 15 years, get questions together from listeners, and got a good handful here. Some of them got a couple questions in the question. We'll see if we can get through them. I'm going to read them out to you, and we'll see who answers first. Where's the buzzer? Okay. And all right, first question is, what's the music used during the shows? Well, it depends on which show you're listening to. If you're listening to this show, the Cosmick Voice, the beginning music, when it kicks in, and the end music is actually from my band, Corners of Sanctuary. First song is Vengeance of the Warrior, and the end song is Children of the Night. If you're listening to Wait a Cosmic Minute, that is Chris's band, Hereafter. That is the song.
Our band. It's our band, Hereafter.
Well, you're the bigger star, Anyway. And that's the song "Devil by Your Side." I love that song.
I do too.
I use it on a lot of promo.
You do, yes, you do.
I really dig it. That's one of those songs I could keep playing over and over and over again. It should be in the next Pirates of the Caribbean.
That'd be amazing.
Disney, what do they know? In some of the other shows that we don't have anymore, like Cosmo and Muck and Junk, they were stuff that was just kind of created by putting bits and pieces together, and then we used a lot of sound effect type things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. Actually, there's another Hereafter song we've been using for promo in the last couple months, Let the Record Show. That's from the second EP.
It's a good one too, yeah.
To avoid any copyright issue, we use our own music, or we create it from scratch. That's the best that I could say about that. I mean, we're always in-house, right? Everything is in-house for us. And
really, why wouldn't we?
Right.
Why wouldn't we?
We're promoting what we do subtly, kind of passive-aggressively, right? We're just not telling you. We're just screwing it into your head each week. For you to ask a question, what's the music used during your shows? Now you know. Go on to Spotify and do whatever you're supposed to do there.
That's right.
All right, the next question is, why don't you guys cross-promote on your other branding platforms, such as your bands? Well, I can tell you right off the bat, we didn't want to cause a conflict of interest, and that's not kind of our style. This was a separate entity. Even though we talk about it, we don't hide it, and we talk about the bands here too. It's not like we're pressing it over your head, like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. It could be tacky at times. Some artists kind of get a little tacky, in my opinion.
Yeah. I want to say I feel like we talked about it, but maybe we didn't. Like, even when we started in the very beginning, I feel like we maybe or maybe it was just something that maybe the conversation we just each had in our head, like, when we started, it wasn't about plugging the bands or giving the bands promotion. Sometimes we talk about the bands. I try really hard not to say the band's name sometimes. Sometimes I try to dance around. It really depends on the conversation we're having, because I don't want it to be a big commercial for the bands.
Right.
You know, unless we're talking, like we had the episode of, you know, starting a band, and I went through the whole rigmarole about how I started my new band. And because it's not what we're about, right? Like, it's not what we're doing. Well, first of all, it's just not the kind of people we are, number one. Number two, it wasn't about our bands. It was about our experiences at being in the music industry. I mean, that's kind of what the podcast is about. It's not really a commercial for our bands and our music. Although, you know, like, again, like we've said the band's names, and it doesn't bother me at all. But I've always kind of thought that even when I was booking the Trocadero, you know, with Praying Mantis Entertainment, there were so many really cool shows that I didn't put my own band on when I had every opportunity to. And I didn't. It wasn't fair. Like, I just felt like I'm in this position for a reason. This reason is to give other bands other chances, where I could have easily put my band in some really great positions. And I didn't. I chose to let other bands have that. And I don't know. I feel like you're kind of in the same way. It's just not what the podcast is about. It's not about plugging our bands and our music. It's just about trying to show people that we've had these experiences and what we've learned and maybe what we haven't learned yet.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole show was about experiences and how those experiences could help someone else. I mean, even the bad experiences, right? That was one of the first things you and I talked about before even moving forward with anything on this show, was like, we want to talk the good and the bad, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. To really appreciate the good that does happen, you got to kind of accept the bad that comes along with it, because then you go, okay, I know where I've been, I know what I've been through, and it makes that accomplishment all the better. We do mention in bands every so often as part of the context to explain our experiences even more so.
Yes, we do.
But it's not like every other word is the band's name. And I do too. I resist using the band's name when it's just easy to do, and I'll just go my band or what I'm involved in.
Yeah.
That thing. Because I don't want to be that cheesy guy that just keeps saying the same thing over and over again. When I do interviews for the band, I never bring up the podcast.
Yeah.
And
me too,
unless I'm asked.
Unless you're asked.
If I'm asked, then I talk about it. Because some interviewers, if you're in like with StreamYard or something like that, you'll be in that waiting room, and then they do like almost a green room kind of like setup. Like, hey, I do want to talk to you about the podcast. We'll do that at the end if you don't mind. Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah. And, you know, we just bring it back to one thing or the other thing. But, yeah, for the most part, you didn't want one taking away from the other. Because then all of a sudden, people are tuning in to learn about experiences and what they can or can't do or try or something. And there's two guys talking about their bands the whole time, about like how great they are or whatever. You know, that's just not how it goes. So
I think too, you could just, I mean, if you really want to know about the bands we're in, you really could just follow the Cosmic Voice into the Cosmic View, and then you'll just find us. Like, we're not hard to track down.
Right, exactly. I mean, the New York Post and the New Yorker found you in a heartbeat. So
absolutely.
Yeah, if you want a podcast to talk about your experiences and promote your bands, go get one.
That's it.
All right, next question. How do you come up with the show titles?
That's more about...
Well, I tell you, in the first couple seasons, it was something taken out of the dialogue you and I were having, the banter.
Right.
So, like, we were doing that. As time went on, we were getting a little more, like, retro about things. So we were taking stuff from our era and bringing it into the title somehow.
Yeah.
Like when we did the one when we talked about touring. And I think the title was Big Ben Parliament.
Big Ben Parliament,
right.
It was.
That's from European Vacation, and that's from the 80s, so, you know, we're products from the 80s. So we try to have fun with the titles a little bit. We're not trying to create clickbait in any way, shape, or form. To be honest with you, I'm not even sure how to create clickbait, though I fall for it all the time. So you would think that since I fall for it, I know how to write it, but apparently I don't. We just try to be cleverly funny. It doesn't always work. It's a silliness. Right? If you've been following the show, we do get serious, but then we take shots at ourselves all the time, and it's funny, right?
Of course.
And if you've been downloading the comic is just silly fun. It's just not, you know, I mean, it's just goofiness. But we are making references to the show.
Yep.
If you listened, and we're bringing in characters that are part of the space station. It's kiddie fun for 50-some-year-old kind of adults. So...
Kind of adult.
Kind of adult. It depends on the day.
Emphasis on the kind of.
Kind of. Right. So there you have it. That's how we come up with show titles. I know there are people that put stuff in hats or throw stuff at the wall, but no, we just try to be We're trying to be clever. I don't know if it's working, but
Yeah.
I like them. I think they're funny.
Oh,
So,
I do too. I totally
Yeah.
do. I totally
Yeah.
do. Sometimes you'll put something in there and I may forget. We have this conversation back and forth and I'll go, what does that mean? And I'll listen to the show and go,
Oh, yeah. There's some that I've gotten some quotes from. I've gone and looked at some, smart, intelligent people over the centuries, and they have some quote, and I go, oh, that's an interesting quote, and it kind of has a meaning here. It's just another aspect of having fun with the show and giving people more to think about. Like, if you've asked the question, how do you come up with the show titles, you're either asking me because it's stupid as all hell, or it's making you think. So, either way, we've won.
Either way, that's right. That's right.
All right. Oh, here's a more serious question. Here you go. Do you think pre-orders are still important? I'm assuming they're talking about stuff for the band. What do you think, buddy? Do you think pre-orders are still important?
You know what, man? I think pre-orders are more important now, and we've had this conversation pretty frequently, at least in the last couple seasons. And I always go back to, Rob Zombie's last record. Like, it hit the Billboard charts, and that was just by pre-orders. Because once that sucker came out, it dropped off the charts in no time. And I believe, and you may know more about this too, I think Amazon books, right? Like, it kind of works like that too. Like, they could say it's an Amazon bestseller, but don't they look at the pre-sale to determine that?
Yes, there is that whole pre-sale thing that you could be ranked in the top 10 for that week or whatever, depending on other newer releases that are coming out. So yes, and which then apparently statistically it will spike additional pre-order sales.
Yeah. I think it's important, especially in today's time where you really can't gauge on how many people buy physical CDs or vinyl or cassettes to how many people just download it. Because back in the day, we'd order CDs for our bands and, we'd, let's order 1,000. And I still have, 800 in my basement. You're right. Because you think, you're like, because you're young and you're like, 1,000, it's going to be easy. It's really not.
No.
So, and now, we're in this era where you can pre-order things, even t-shirts, they're pre-made as the pre-order comes in. So they don't have tons of leftover shirts or, stuff just doesn't get sold and then they're just laying around. And so really, I think pre-order is important for all kinds of aspects, for the labels, for the merch people, for the bands. So you kind of gauge on how much you need and how much, you need to get out there. Now, obviously, touring may be a little different, but touring with merch is a whole different conversation. I think pre-orders are super important. And now in the industry with the Billboard charts and all that, they really gauge pre-orders on where these albums are going to be sitting, when they come out.
Oh, I agree. For our recent EP, we did a pre-order autographed CD, a limited run of the autographed CD. There'll be other CDs available after the pre-order is done, of course, but they won't be autographed. So the first run before the actual release of the EP, all autographed. And we've been moving them. We're staying pretty consistent with them, which I'm excited about, because the new thing is that whole waterfall release model, where basically the whole digital market now, right? So they release a single, then every 6 to 8 weeks, another single's released, another single's released. So technically, if you have an EP of 6 songs, I mean, you do the math. If it's every 6 weeks, that's 36 weeks. That's 3/4 of a year it takes for your EP to completely drop digitally. Yeah. So if you're not having sales of the physical nature, in my opinion, you're missing out on... I mean, physical sales are coming back. I don't think they're ever going to be like they were because there was no digital back then in regards that people could just download it to their phone or wherever.
Right.
But I think that physical market has taken a step up. People are realizing, bands especially, hey, this is important to have, and this is a way to generate some money up front. Right? Number one. And two, like you were saying, for labels and artists and bookers and stuff, you can start generating some interest early on if you're booking a tour. So that tour could book before the album actually comes out. But if you have pre-orders, well, one hand washes the other, so to speak.
Yeah. And I also think, too, there's this on a music lover like myself side where I like to buy physical stuff. A lot of bands, especially a lot of the bigger bands, are doing, like bulk order or, bulk orders, t-shirt, CD, vinyl for $80 and whatever it is. And, that gets you to pre-order too, because it's really cool that, you'll get a shirt, a CD and a vinyl, or just a vinyl and a shirt, on, hopefully close to, or if not long after release day. But they're doing these bundles, and I think that's pretty cool. That's a really cool thing, especially for someone like me that still likes to buy physical stuff and shirts and stuff like that. Like I like that.
I agree. I agree. A number of years ago, we did an album release. We did it digitally first in May, and then the CD release, the physical release, came out in August. Honestly, didn't work out the way I think that the label thought it was going to work out. They thought that people were going to generate enough interest digitally, and then they were going to then buy it again in a physical. It didn't happen like that. Have I sold those CDs over the years? Yes. And like I've said before, sooner or later, everything sells at the merch table. You may not get the top dollar at one point, but it will move over time.
It will eventually move.
So, you know how like some albums, not that I'm comparing this, but an album that's been out for, 30 years has finally been certified as gold or platinum.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of the accumulation or the compounding of numbers.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how you look at it. But I do think that pre-orders are very important, and if you're seeing the big acts do it, and like as Chris pointed out with all these bundles and stuff, because sometimes that's what sells the CDs. I got to say this, on Judas Priest's last album release, Firepower, you know what they did? When you bought a concert ticket, you got a CD included with every ticket. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't, man.
Yes.
I don't.
We bought a couple tickets, and we got a couple CDs in the mail. So that was really cool. So if you think about this, they were already selling. People didn't have to go out to get it. All they had to do was buy a concert ticket. Now, I'm not sure why more people don't do that. We do it sometimes. We'll give you a free CD or something if you buy a ticket to one of the bigger shows. It just entices people.
Yeah.
But if you think about that, think about, I don't know, just say every show had 10,000 people in it. And I know some probably had more. But then you do the math. Say they did 50 shows that year with 10,000 people, and every ticket that was bought got a CD. Do the math. That's a lot of CDs sold. That's already gold plus.
And how did they determine where you were sitting?
We got it in the mail. We got the CD in the mail. You had to fill out when you bought the ticket, you filled something out. From what I remember, who originally did that, Cher did that years ago. When she did that whole auto-tune song and stuff like that, whatever. She actually did the same exact thing.
Okay, so you bought the ticket, and I see. Okay.
Yeah. And Ozzy did it one year, the album that has Gus G on it. He did it. You bought a ticket to Ozfest, and you got a digital download of the album.
Well, and Kiss did that too, right? A number of years ago, didn't they? If you were at the show, right? Didn't you? It was like $20, and you got like a little hard drive of that show that night.
Oh yeah, the hard drive thing. Yeah. Or a little USB or something like that.
Yeah, a little USB. Yeah.
So you want to increase your concert sales or your CD sales, include it with a ticket.
Yeah. I think the pre-orders is a great idea.
Yeah, I do too. It leaves a lot of room for creativity.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. The next question. What's your favorite decade of metal as a listener, and what's your favorite decade as a player musician? Oh, wow. What do you think, buddy? What's your favorite decade of metal as a listener and as a musician?
Of metal. Wow.
Yeah. What you think, Willis?
I guess the decade of metal, I guess for me would be the 80s. That was, we grew up in the 80s, right? Like those are the years that kind of formed who we are as musicians.
For me, the 80s. Both as a player and a listener. When we talked about this in an episode a couple episodes ago, actually, that I gravitate towards the music that I grew up listening to. I don't listen to much modern stuff. Like when I'm stressed or down or whatever, I go to, it's like a comfort food.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think 80s too. Yeah, I'll agree with that.
There is some late 70s stuff that's really good. You got Judas Priest, you got some Kiss stuff, you got Van Halen. So
yeah.
Could also be a half and half. Like you could go from 77 to 84, 85, before the hair metal explosion per se.
Yeah.
It depends, but I would probably hands down, I think for most
80
people...
80 to 90.
Yeah, 80 to 90 just to be safe. And that's not just metal. Even though it's asking for metal as a listener, a lot of hard rock, the early 80s arena rock.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, yeah.
Yeah, which was hugely influential on just my thinking in terms of song structure.
Yeah, for sure.
If you think about it, so...
For sure.
Though it is a complicated question, I guess, for two lugheads like us, the 80s. Yeah, 80s. Okay. All right, let's see. Here's another question. Why do you think younger generations are not picking up instruments and putting together bands like they did before? I think they're lazy. It's a commitment.
Yeah, it is a commitment. And, with all these School of Rocks kind of places, and it's a fleeting thing. And I'll just use this for example. So a close friend of mine, his daughter is in a School of Rock kind of, it's not School of Rock, but it's like that. And I've seen a couple of her performances. They perform like every, I think, 6 months or every 3 months or every quarter, whatever it is. I've seen her perform a couple of times. I've literally watched her class get smaller and smaller and smaller. It may have started in a group of 30 kids, and now it's probably a group of 10 or 12. I mean, I hate to say it because I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to say, but I think it has something to do with laziness. I think that social media and streaming has really changed the way kids want to get famous. Like, for me, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a huge rock star. I wanted to be famous, whatever. Now the big fame thing is being a YouTube star or, playing games on Twitch. And, I just think that's where the younger generation is now. I just don't think that they have any interest in the work that comes with playing a instrument or learning how to play an instrument or learning to write songs. It is, man. It's a commitment. And, you and I have talked about it all these seasons of the show and how much sacrifice and how much commitment. If you don't have that music passion in your blood like you and I do, that is a hard thing to sell to somebody. Like, people just don't understand. You can't really explain to people how being a musician feels and the passion and the happiness that music and being in music gives us. I don't think that kids today, their passions are somewhere else. The music is different too. When we were growing up, it was guys playing bass, drums, guitar, singing, and all these things. And we really don't have that now. We have, we do have your Taylor Swifts and your Pinks, but it's certainly not the music industry. The popular music today isn't what it was a long time ago. I think we lost that also. And I think that hurts the younger generation.
Yes. Like we said early on, it's definitely a commitment. At any level, it's a commitment. It's something that you have to work towards every day. And I think that society has changed so much with the idea of instant gratification. It's at your fingertips. If it takes longer than 8 seconds, people just move on to the next thing. Well, that all plays into it. Somebody once said to me, "Hey, have you ever played Rock Band?" I said, "Nah." I said, "I lived it." I couldn't even figure the red buttons out. But to Rock Band and Guitar Hero's credit, they actually brought the old school rock and hard rock kind of to the forefront again. It kind of really helped some bands out, some artists. I remember reading an article years ago that kids who were really good at Rock Band, Guitar Hero, and the knockoffs weren't able to translate that to real guitar. They were really bummed out about it. So much so that, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's actually this apparatus you put on the guitar neck that looks like it's a colorized button system that looks like, or it looks similar to those buttons on those guitars from Rock Band or Guitar Hero to teach people how to play guitar. Those first 6 months as a guitar player, building up the calluses on your fingers so they weren't bleeding and that kind of thing. And then you had to build up the strength in your hand and your fingers, and then you had the dexterity, patterns. And I guess it's just not like that anymore. Though we see younger bands out on the scene. I've played with a number of those School of Rock type groups on venues, and it's just really, sometimes it's not that great for whatever. I don't know if putting them alongside bands that are in the scene working towards something or even with a national is appropriate, in my opinion, because they're usually very slow to set up, very slow to come down, because they're not being taught any of that. They're not being taught stage etiquette. It's just about, play this or do that.
Playing, right.
I'm a supporter of it if it's getting people to take advantage of music, because over the last 20-some years, the humanities have been taken out of grade schools and high schools and even cut down in colleges. And by that, I mean like things of the arts, right? Like art appreciation, music appreciation, theater, even certain programs in history have been eliminated because people don't seem to care anymore. Don't care.
Right.
Even in grade school, you had music appreciation for a while. You had art appreciation. These were rotating classes that only lasted maybe 6 weeks, but that was part of what you were experiencing to give you a little bit more of a foundation to what's available out there. You just don't see that anymore. You just don't see it anymore.
No.
And as brick and mortar places have started to disappear, I mean, even in recent time here, Sam Ash, the mega music store, they're closing down stores.
Yeah.
They're closing two in our area. Been here 20 plus years. Yeah. So it's the physical sales of people going into a store have died off. That means kids just aren't going in and playing guitar.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer. It's kind of a bummer.
It is a bummer.
Yeah.
It is a bummer. Yeah.
I guess that's it. But at the same time, there's always that percentage. It's not like nobody's doing it. It's just it doesn't seem to be as many people. I mean, which is why you're finding it's harder to find replacement musicians.
Yeah. Yep.
And oftentimes maybe everybody cycles through the same 3 bass players.
Yeah.
Right? Or a guy comes back after a couple years or something because the pool's getting smaller and smaller and more shallow.
It's true. Yep.
That's a good question.
You are listening to the Cosmick Voice with your hosts, Chris Natalini and Mick Michaels.
All right, the next question is having a diverse set of musical or genre interests as an artist beneficial for the metal genre as a whole? So if you have a diverse set of musical interests or genre interests where it's just not metal, so as an artist, is that more beneficial for the metal genre as a whole, giving it more diversity?
Yeah, I think so. I think because you take experiences from whatever you've done or doing, you know what I mean? Like, I guess a perfect example off the top of my head would be, maybe the Hereafter stuff, right? Like, that was something I was really into doing. And by doing it, proved to me that I could do something out of my box. And I learned that I could do it. I learned that I really had a great time doing it, and I'm very proud of it. And it just gave me that confidence that just to do something outside of the box, to do something different. And I think that helps because that confidence, in my case, that confidence carried me through other things that I do. You know what I mean? Like I go, well, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but I was able to do the Hereafter stuff. Look how that came out. So I'm going to follow through with this thought or this idea or this whatever because I have the confidence to do it. So, yeah, I think so. I think anything that you do outside of the box, whether you fail or succeed, I think is always going to help you in the end. You're going to be able to learn something, and you'll be able to take those lessons, fail or succeed, right into what you really like to do.
Oh, yeah. I feel being diverse in anything, it allows you to cover more bases. It allows you to have more opportunity to do things, to be involved in things, to be asked to be involved in things. I think that if you really... I know there's, especially among metal guys, and even back in the old days, our old days, I'm going to venture to say with some of the more extreme versions of metal, I think it may not be so cool to say, hey, man, I'm also into this, and I listen to this, and I listen to that. Today, it may not be as bad, but I think at a point where...
it's as bad,
Yeah, I think it's more acceptable, because they do a little cross-genre here and there, but in terms of personal influences, I think it's key. You didn't know, per se, back in the old makeup days of Kiss, that Paul Stanley was into the soul sound and R&B and stuff. You knew there was some Beatles influence, right? But at that time, and for those guys at their age at that time, every musician was inspired by the Beatles. They pretty much changed the face of things. Right. So if you're an extreme black metal band or whatever that stuff is, and you say, hey, I really like the Bee Gees, that may not look good for your persona, for the portrayal of your character. Now, I'm not saying all these guys are characters. There is some character to them. But
that is for sure.
At the same time, listen, in any field, I don't care who you are, what you're doing, there's always guys that are play acting because they know it's image. It's okay, right? I don't believe that everybody's going out and burning churches and killing cats and professing the something of the apocalypse. I think some of it's a shtick. I really do. I'm sorry to say. I mean, we now know that, listen, I hate to break this to you, this spoiler alert, Ozzy is not the Prince of Darkness. Okay? He wasn't trying to convert everybody to Satanism, for whatever that is. He wasn't really trying to corrupt your mind or souls, because he was doing a good job of that for himself. He probably wasn't even sure what he was doing. Same with Kiss. They are not knights in Satan's society.
Right.
Right? They were just guys that were having a good time, and they found something that worked, and it made them millions. So there is some play acting in some of this. And then you find out when an artist gets comfortable or set or accomplished, then they start telling you, hey, you know, I listen to jazz and I do this and I don't listen to any metal. I actually, what calms me down is, you know, I listen to Britney Spears, or, you know, you find out that Chris Natalini really does like Taylor Swift. Because he said it here on this show. Couldn't get enough of those videos. We were just at a show together, and I said, I mean, maybe I've heard her songs, but I couldn't pick them out in a police roundup. The only song I know is the Christmas song that she did that was a Wham song, whatever that was. Last Christmas, right?
Last Christmas,
right.
yeah.
So I know that. Other than that, I couldn't tell you one song that she did. Not to say that I haven't heard it, because maybe I have, and I just never equated it to. To quickly go back to the previous question about kids not wanting to pick up instruments and all, Chris, you brought up a good point. Bands aren't the same thing now. Like, the rise of being a solo artist, whether it's a YouTube star or a TikTok star, it's a solo effort. Effort.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think everybody wants to just be that person. Yeah. Like, there's so many solo acts in pop now. Like, and I don't even know who they are. I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
How many bands are in the top 10 Billboard right now, like, of mainstream pop music? Probably not. They're probably all, if not 9 out of 10 of them, are probably like solo acts.
Yeah.
Right? So where are the bands?
Yeah.
You and I grew up on bands. Were there solo acts? Yeah, there was always that group of solo acts. But bands are what drove everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you really think about it, some of the guys we grew up on that became solo artists came from bands, right? There was Eric Clapton, Cream, right? Rod Stewart was in a band. Like, you know, even Kenny Rogers came from, I can't think of the name of his band, but he was in a band too.
Right. Sammy Hagar came from Montrose.
Sammy Hagar, Montrose. Yeah. Yep.
You know,
I
mean,
Sting came from the Police.
Right. Phil Collins came from Genesis.
Right. Genesis, right.
Because that's what it was, because you didn't do it on your own. Right. A lot of those guys that were solo acts in the 50s and early 60s, they were usually manufactured acts. Somebody found them.
Yes.
Even at the late 90s, you remember with the rise of the boy bands here in America, they were all bands. They were groups. Now, none of them played any instruments per se.
Yeah. But they were groups.
But they were groups, at least. They were
groups.
They were dancing and singing and harmonizing and all that. You know, they were taking that barbershop quartet type of idea and really creating a whole pop thing to it.
Yeah.
So, and then guys from those groups went on, like Justin Timberlake was a part of, you know, NSYNC and so on and so forth. Going back to the other question, yes, I think having a diverse set of musical interests, genre interests, I think it's crucial, because songwriting is songwriting. And the more you can pick from, the more you'll not be just a cookie cutter type of approach. I know that the style of metal that I do, it's a throwback sound with a modern twist. However, like, I'm not just picking from metal, because my influences go way further than that. And I've said it before on this, my father was a huge Beatles fan. Both my mother and my father were into doo-wop. My uncle was into R&B, Motown, so I had all that. My brother was always into the hard rock, so that's where a lot of that came from. But my grandfather was in a string band, so we, you know, there was a lot of banjo and stuff like that. But he also listened to Italian music. So, you know, you're growing up with all this stuff in your head. Yeah. And I had an affinity for pop music growing up in the 70s and early 80s, when you had a radio and you were listening to the Osmonds on the radio, the Jackson 5, like you said, Rod Stewart, Elton John, Donna Summers, you name it. You keep going. Kenny Loggins in the 70s and the 80s. You were affected by that. When we talked about what our favorite decade of music is, it's the 80s, and not just for heavy metal. Yeah, it was kind of like the real big birth of it, in a sense, especially here in America. But there was so much more. That's why you hear more of the 80s music played on radio stations more than any other decade. because it still sounds good. It's still relevant. Yes, some songs are more dated sounding than others because they had that 80s mystique to it, but still there was something about it. There was some substance to it. Are you going to hear songs like that from this era currently right now, 20 years from now? I'm going to say no, because the songs a lot of them are on and off the charts.
Yeah.
You have a hit and it's gone, a hit and it's gone. Were there people like that then? Absolutely. But there were guys that stayed on the charts for most of the year, and sometimes with multiple songs in the top 10, top 5.
Yeah, it's true.
That's just our opinion from a bunch of old guys. All right, next question. How do you convey your influences in your music? How do you incorporate it and not copy it? Whoa, that's you, Chris.
Well, I copy, so I can't really.
Yeah, I just started doing covers, so I don't. It doesn't count.
I don't know. I don't really think about it, to be honest. I think that it just comes out naturally. I mean, there are things that I've sang in a style that I've sang that I go, oh, that sounds like so and so, or oh, that sounds like so and so, and that it just comes out natural because it's just what I enjoy listening to. It's who I follow. It's who inspired me. So I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that, except that I don't really think about it. It just kind of comes out that way.
That's what I was going to say. I don't put time to think about it. It just happens.
It just happens, yeah.
There's going to be some multiple influences. I never hid from the fact that I was influenced by Judas Priest or Accept or Sabotage, but I don't make a conscious effort to go, I got to make this song sound like Judas Priest. I got to make this song sound. No, that's not what we do. I mean, now there may be a song that has elements of all 4 of those bands, but that's not something I structured. It just starts to happen that way because that's how we do it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's an easy question. Here's our last question because we're winding down here. Where do you think the future of metal is going? In the toilet.
In the toilet. I think the future of metal is going to be exactly where it is and exactly where it's always been. I mean, it's gotten a little popular in the past number of years. It's got a little more of a mainstream hit.
It's edgy and cool for certain acts to jump in, like Lady Gaga or Dolly Parton or
Yes.
Pat Boone.
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be exactly where it is. I don't think it's going to anywhere. It will always be around. It will always be here in some form or way. It's always been. It's always kind of flown under the radar with a little bit of hipness to it, a little bit of
danger.
Yeah, exactly. Good word. Yeah. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to stay exactly where it is.
I agree. I think that it's going to continue to grow and expand, and I think you're going to get some more splintering in the genres. But I think that you're always going to need that, for a lack of a better term, that aggressive representation that demonstrates that it doesn't have to be violent just because it's aggressive. Do you know what I mean? Aggressive could just be intensive. It could be thought-provoking. And can that happen in other forms of music? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is a tendency with the sound and the beat and the speed sometimes that it represents a part of the human condition, that human character, that Cro-Magnon type of approach, both in male and female, that still resonates in us. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
It's a release without having to cause anyone any harm or discomfort. It's a personal thing. And if you don't like it, just like all these years, you don't listen to it. You find what works well for you.
Yep. Yeah. Agree, man. I agree. 100%.
So there you go, man. We just got a bunch of cool questions. I mean, there was some good stuff there. I enjoyed it.
It was very well thought out questions.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I mean, and that was all off the cuff. We just read the questions. Both of us did get to see the questions before we started taping, but I didn't write down any answers, and I don't think Chris did either. And
no, I did not. I read them over, and I was like, oh, wow, these are really cool. And
they're honest
totally
answers.
honest.
Yeah,
that's why I try not to think of things to answer, because I like to just be honest.
So thank you, everyone that sent us in questions. We do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
That was really cool. So that episode, dedicated to you. Dedicated to you.
Yes.
What do you got, buddy? You got anything else you want to add?
No, sir, I do not. Just thank you very much for the questions, everybody. They were awesome and very well thought out. Actually, me think for sure. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. If you like that episode, check out some of our other episodes at www.thecosmicvoice.com. Step into the Cosmic Verse and fill that void. And be sure to tune in this summer for our special limited series, The Cosmic Talk. It's going to be a short one. I can't get Chris penned down for too many shows, but it's going to be one of those limited run series. So check it out. It's going to be out this summer.
I'm excited.
Thanks so much for listening. This is The Cosmic Voice. Be sure to check us out at thecosmicvoice.com. Like and follow us on Facebook at The Cosmic Voice. You can find The Cosmic Voice everywhere you listen to online podcasts, like Deezer, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, and so many more.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, Mick and I would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see covered in future episodes of The Cosmic Voice. And you can get in touch with us through thecosmicvoice.com and, of course, all of the Cosmic Voice social medias. Take care and be safe.
You're listening to The Cosmic Voice. Music, talk, and nothing but business.